Hey, all. Let's talk about another common question. And this is one that usually comes up at some point after like 20 minutes of really talking about what is election violence and what tends to cause it. And somebody will finally just say, listen, I hear you talking about like behaviors and environment, and we all need to be paying attention to what we're putting out into the world. And honestly, I got to tell you, it is so obvious that the threat of election violence is only one side's fault that I feel like you're being disingenuous. Now, here's the thing. It depends who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to a group that is primarily composed of liberals, they tend to think it's the conservative side's fault. And if I'm talking to a side that is primarily conservatives, they tend to think that it's the liberal side's fault. And both of them listen to me talk about this, and they say, if you're not talking about election violence in a way that is blaming a particular person or group, like if you're not saying it is X person's fault or it is Y group's fault, then obviously you're saying that everybody is the same and nobody's better than anybody else, and I just don't believe you. So let's start with, do I actually believe it's the case that both sides are the same and this situation is not anybody's fault more than it is somebody else? No, that's actually not my opinion. I do hold the opinion that there are some people in our country who are contributing to the problem of potential violence more than other people are. That is my opinion. That's my understanding of the situation. My opinion also does not matter. Because here's the thing. It is true, even if some people are taking more extreme actions than others, it is true that all of us put things out into the environment. All of us have rhetoric. All of us talk about political issues in particular ways. And when we talk about them by saying, I disagree with this person, or I feel angry with this situation, or whatever it is, that's one thing. And when we start name calling or ridiculing or holding people in contempt, that's another. And those are the kinds of situations that start to escalate the potential for violence. Also, when we talk about emotion, if we are putting out a lot of anger and a lot of fear, and we're trying intentionally to raise the level of anger and fear in other people, which a lot of us are doing, then that's causing a problem. And if I'm taking the kinds of actions that result in siloed communities where people don't actually know each other, and I'm spreading rumors, and I'm escalating the tension, I'm probably not doing that with violent intent. This is probably not me thinking, aha, if I escalate the tension and I spread rumors and I say mean things about people, then there will be violence. That's probably not how I'm thinking about it. I'm probably actually thinking about it more like, I feel really strongly about this. It seems obvious to me which side is right. And it feels really good and helpful when I say these things to groups of people who come back at me and say, yeah, you got it. You're absolutely right. Like, I get it. I understand where that comes from. But when we do these things, we are contributing to an environment that's going to be more reactive. I've said before, we are not going to be able to completely eliminate every incident of election violence. There will be some. And those are catalysts. Those are situations where something happens and then either the environment around it reacts or else it doesn't. We want to build an environment that is non-reactive. We want to build environments, communities, groups of people, situations where if something bad happens, we are not going to react to that bad thing by becoming more and more and more violent. We're not going to let ripples happen. That's the environment we want to build, a non-reactive environment. This is not the same as compromising, and it's not the same as not having political views. You can have a political opinion. You can express it. You can express it clearly and vehemently and passionately, and you can refuse to compromise even an inch. And still, even with that strong disagreement and passionate belief that you are right and the other people are wrong, you can still create a non-reactive, non-violent environment. And that's what I'm talking about. Part of this has to do with the way that we talk about each other. So if I believe that one political party is doing better than the other, or one candidate is better than the other, or whatever it is, then I am then I can talk about saying, I think that this group is more right and the other group is more wrong. I can say this group is better, the other group is worse. I have a problem when I start saying my group is purely good and your group is purely evil. Because for one thing, that's just not true. And for another thing, that creates this situation where if your side is evil, then the people who believe in it must also be evil. And therefore, it would be all right if violence happened to that group of people. That's the way of thinking that we end up going down. And again, nobody does this on purpose. At least almost nobody does this on purpose. But it's about creating an environment where we don't want that to be the dynamic. When I come from a point of view of one side of the situation is to blame for the possibility of violence, that's just unhelpful. No matter who it is that I'm choosing to blame, it might feel good. I might feel vindicated internally, but it doesn't work. We know from international research and trying these things that this just doesn't work because people from the other side don't feel like they can work with me on nonviolence if I'm saying it's all your fault. And if the team of people who's working on preventing violence only includes one particular political group, then that group of people is a minority. And we need a majority of people in the United States saying, we are not going to allow violence to happen. If we're going to do that, we have to be truthful about the kinds of behaviors that can cause problems and can make the environment more likely to be violent. I have to be able to recognize and name and point out and interrupt the patterns when they are being done by the side that I don't like. And I have to be able to recognize them and interrupt them and all of that when they're being done by the side that I do like. And I also have to be able to recognize and interrupt the patterns when they are happening within me. So one more time, why do I talk about this from a point of view of behavior and environment and not from a point of view of who to blame? It is not because I am trying to approach this in the way that is the most ethical or the most moral. And it's not because I think that everybody in the world is nice. And it's not because I'm trying to be fair. And it's not because I'm trying to be impartial. The reason why we approach this talking about behaviors and environment and not about blame is because that's the approach that actually works. That's the approach by which we have some hope of being able to prevent violence, because as long as we can focus on the behaviors and not on individual people that we think are bad, then we're going to be able to work together and we're going to be able to stop it.